Full Colour Alchemy issue 5. This episode I will be reviewing Chew by John Layman and Rob Gilroy. It's published by Image Comics and it's actually an ongoing comic series. An ongoing series is a comic that comes out at least once a month and is roughly 22 pages of story. Chew, for example, is currently up to issue 47. Now the previous two comics I reviewed, I Kill Giants and Seconds, were both actually one-shots or a limited series. I Kill Giants was actually released as a 7-part comic series and then collected together into one comic, traditionally referred to as a trade paperback or a graphic novel. A term that still irritates me, but I'll explain why in a later episode. I picked Chew because 1, I feel it doesn't get enough love from the fandom, and 2, I wanted an example of an ongoing series. If you ever find yourself in the vicinity of the comic shop and you've actually watched this video and I've piqued your interest enough in comics that you might go in and choose something, you're going to look at the shelves and shelves and shelves of comics and you are going to see issue 47 of something and wonder, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to have to catch up on the previous 46 issues to understand what's going on, especially in a series like Chew, which has a very strong ongoing story. So I'm going to be using Chew as an example of not only an excellent comic, but how you can actually catch up on those 46 issues. The basic gist of Chew is that it's set in an alternative world that's very similar to ours, technology slightly more advanced, and bird flu basically ran rampant across the world, causing an awful lot more deaths and horror. So chicken and poultry are now outlawed. There's a full-time police job of trying to keep illegal chicken dens under control. It's a bit like prohibition with chickens instead of booze. The main character is Tony Chew, who has a weird psychic ability. He's called I think it's pronounced Cyberpath. And basically he can tell the history of anything that he tastes, except beetroots. He can eat as many beetroots as he likes and he'll never know where that beetroot came from. But basically, if he eats a hamburger, he knows exactly what the cow went through to get to being a hamburger. He's a police officer, and when he comes across things like a dead body or a crime scene or that, he quite often will take a bite out of something, and it will give him who murdered the victim and the history of what built up to that crime according to the actual victim. So he will see where the victim went and what happened to him and all that kind of stuff. Tony is soon recruited by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and is embroiled in a massive conspiracy theory, ongoing story full of plot twists, pratfalls, psych bug, chickens, and weird languages from outer space. Chew is really interesting because unlike some other comics like Saga or Walking Dead, there isn't a very strong central theme. There's actually quite a few different things going on between the slightly science fiction elements and the psychic elements and the police elements. This, coupled with the slightly cartoony style of Rob Gilroy, makes for a very interesting book. It's funny, it's sad, it's full of action, and incredibly unique ideas. The psychic powers based on foodstuffs alone are just mind-boggling and incredibly imaginative. John Layman develops this world so beautifully. It's an incredibly rich, detailed world. In all the panels, there's always something going on in the background. Not enough for you to be distracted, but there's always little details and little sight gags or little things somewhere to keep you interested and create a fully three-dimensional world. And I feel that without that incredibly strong central premise that some other books have, for example, Zombie Apocalypse, Romeo and Juliet romance, I feel that without that strong central element, he actually gives you a stronger world to take part in. Chew is actually a comic that I do recommend for new readers because everybody's familiar with police procedural type programs. You've got NCIS, you've got CSI New York, CSI Miami, The Bill. Everybody's seen a cop show, and so a cop is a character that you can get behind. They have a clear motivation. They see a crime, they solve the crime, and Tony Chew is a character like that. You can get behind him. And despite the weird elements of the comic, it's a very strong detective, police, conspiracy theory type story. You want to know what's happening next, so it's a very good lead-in to comics, I think. And the weirdness of the comic itself can also be a very good introduction to the weirdness, the greater weirdness of other comics. As I would recommend Chew to a new reader, I would recommend that you buy Chew in a trade paperback format. Trade paperbacks are collections of 5 or more issues of the floppy format of the comic. So trade paperback 1 of Chew will be issues 1 to 5 of that comic. The next one will be obviously 6 to 10 and so on and so forth. Now the advantages of getting a trade paperback are it's actually cheaper than buying the issues one by one. You get a nice big chunk of the story all in one go, and there aren't any adverts. The downsides are that you're actually paying between £10 and £15 for a trade paperback, and that can seem quite daunting for something that you don't know a lot about. Also, you have to wait until the relevant amount of issues, say 1 to 5, are actually collected together in the trade in the first place. And as your standard comic, your floppy, comes out once a month, that means you have to wait the relevant amount of months for the relevant amount of issues to be traded together in the first place. So if there are 5 issues per trade, you've got to wait 5 months for that comic to be traded, and that's also if they trade it straight after the 5th issue. Chew is up to trade paperback 9, so if you read it trade paperback 1 and enjoyed it, by the time you reach trade paperback 9, if you're still reading it, there'll be at least 2, maybe even 3 trade paperbacks ahead, and you could probably just keep buying them as they come out after you've read them anyway. Now, the price of the trade itself, like I said, is somewhere between £10 and £15. It can be more depending on how many of the floppy comics are actually collected together in the trade. Say if it's a 12-part series, that could be anywhere between £15 and £20. But it still actually works out cheaper than buying, say, all 12 issues, or buying a comic as it comes out monthly. Image, who published Chew, always release their first trades of a series at considerably cheaper than usual as well, usually around about £7.50, and that makes them ideal tasters for that series. £7.50, believe it or not, is only £3, maybe £4 more expensive than a single issue of the comic, and you're getting 5 of them in one trade. That can actually work out cheaper in the long run to sample the first trade of a comic, specifically if it's from Image. Obviously, you can also find early trade paperbacks in sales in comic shops, occasionally in bookshops, and obviously on Amazon. They sell them for considerably cheaper than sticker price in a bricks and mortar shop. There are other formats of trade paperback. There are omnibus editions, which can go from, 10 to 50 issues of any given series. There are hardbacks. There are special editions like The Dark Knight Returns, which comes with like editor's notes and scripts and pages of sketches and things like that. They're mainly aimed at the more sort of hardcore collector market. The bog standard trade paperback is for a person who just enjoys reading comics, which is why I would recommend the bog standard trade paperback of anything really to somebody who's new to comics. But Chew specifically because I feel it's a very good introduction comic. So what exactly is the point of a floppy comic book, a monthly serialized comic book? If trades are cheaper, there's no adverts, why don't they just create those? Well, that's something I'll be going into in another issue. Needless to say, it's got a lot to do with comic geek collector mentality, and it is a dying format. But like I said, I'll be covering that in the next issue. Or the issue after that. There's a few things I want to do with this series. I do hope you noticed I got this one out a lot faster than the previous one. Building up speed, got my technique down. And now that the summer months are coming in as well, I'll be able to wear more t-shirts and less jumpers. So I'm quite happy about that. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the section below. Keep them clean, no fighting. I don't mind a heated debate, but no flame wars. I've also got the Facebook page, 4Colour Reactions, which covers both the blog and this video cast. And if you want to be a member of that, you simply send me a request. And if you're not a 401 scam or claiming I can earn £10,000 working from home, I'll let you on the page. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next issue.